year was 1986. Ronald Reagan was president. A gallon of gas cost 93 cents. The Oprah Winfrey Show made its national debut. Whitney Houston sang The Greatest Love of All. And this was also the year Laurie Singer married Rabbi Gregory Marx. Let's see, how many years has it been? Well, I'll let them tell you.
Go ahead.
33. Two.
Almost 33. It'll be 33 when this is shown.
Cut.
This is a couple that were meant to be together. Beshert, especially considering they grew up very far apart. Laurie in Duluth, Minnesota. And our rabbi?
I grew up in the land of our fathers, Miami Beach, Florida.
After graduating college, Laurie decided to move to Florida to be with her parents, who had relocated. She was soon hired by the local synagogue, Temple Bethel in Boca Raton, as a youth advisor. Working at that same synagogue as an assistant rabbi was Gregory Marx.
I was an assistant rabbi down in Boca Raton, and my portfolio was to take care of the youth group. And quite frankly, that was never my strong suit. I really didn't know much about running youth groups.
I went to the synagogue to get some work, and I was asked to be the youth advisor. I was 23 or 24, and I was walking through the synagogue, and all of a sudden I heard some steps behind me, and he was following me.
She was so committed to her work, and she was so passionate and so exciting. And she was beautiful, and she played guitar, and I thought, like, wow, this is an interesting woman.
And then he asked me out, and I said yes, and then we started doing things that we were like...
Telling the youth groupers not to do.
Right. And next thing I know, I'm getting married to him.
I was an assistant rabbi, and I knew I didn't want to be the number two for the rest of my career. And the normal pattern was you kind of learn how to do the work, and you get trained, and you learn the politics of a congregation, and then you go out and you look. And in 1989, I put my resume out and was looking around.
Lucky enough for Beth Or, Rabbi and Laurie Marx added our synagogue to their list for consideration. And again, it was a perfect match. From the very first meetings, it felt, once again, Beshert.
I remember it was so warm and welcoming, and we came in and people were excited and smiling, and I remember thinking, how am I going to remember everybody's name? But it was just so exciting.
I remember going to a parlor meeting with some founders and leaders in the congregation, and one of them said to me something that really stayed with me. He said, all of my social network, all of my friends, I met through Beth Or. And I realized that Beth Or was not just a place for prayer and sending your kids to religious school, but it was a community for so many.
Truth be told, when Laurie and Greg first arrived at Beth Or, they were not quite sure how long they would be staying, not knowing if this would be a permanent pulpit. Now, 30 years later, Rabbi Marx has become the longest-serving rabbi in the Bucksmont area. Why? Because his style and the congregation's character were in perfect sync. Beth Or has a reputation for working for the common good, which has always been forefront in the Marx household. But the Beth Or of the 1980s is a far cry from the congregation of today, due in large part to our rabbi's leadership. When Rabbi and Laurie arrived at our congregation, there were 150 families. Now there are over 1,000. In numbers, the congregation has grown tremendously, and the credit is due to their outstanding leadership. Rabbi Marx had a unique approach to moving the congregation forward, in both progressive as well as more traditional ways.
When we came, we were pretty classical reform. People weren't wearing talit or kippot, and that was one of the first things Greg did, was try and bring that in. And I'm not sure how many people loved that in the beginning, because we were so classical reform, but Greg kind of eased them into it.
In the early days of Reform Judaism, when they were saying, we're not going to do this because we're Reform, they knew what it was they were rejecting. We're not going to put tefillin on, but everybody knew what tefillin was. Now we have a whole generation of Reform Jews who don't even know what the opportunities are to reject. And so in my position, you want to give people as many as the traditional opportunities as possible so people can freely choose and say, well, I'm going to do this or I'm not going to do that. But if we never expose them to those traditions, they have nothing to compare it to. Always we celebrate freedom of choice, and you can come in on a Saturday morning and some are wearing kippot and some are not, some are wearing talesim and some are not, but talesim and kippot are available if you want to put them on. And that was not the custom of Beth Or when I came.
I think he wanted to teach people everything so they could then decide not to do it if they didn't want to do it. They wanted, ultimately, he just wants everybody to, learn.
And I think, and I will credit, since so this is an opportunity to give thanks, I will give credit to the rabbi who raised me. And his name was Leon Kronish, and he was a great, great Reform rabbi who was a Zionist, but he was a traditional Jew and a Reform rabbi. So I grew up in a Reform congregation, but it was not the typical classical Reform congregation that many people associate with Reform Judaism. It was much more to the right, not only when it came to Israeli politics and Israel, but also in terms of religious practice. And I modeled a lot of my rabbinate after my rabbi. I thought the rabbinate was the perfect opportunity to do a little bit of everything. A rabbi is a social worker, a rabbi is a politician, a rabbi is a fundraiser, a rabbi is a motivational speaker. The rabbinate is, I think, one of the few professions left where every day is a little different. You don't get to do the same thing every day. And when I was thinking about my career opportunities, my synagogue was sort of like the center of much of my life when I was growing up. And so I thought, what a great thing to do for a living. So that's kind of how I ended up in the rabbinate.
And the seasons, they go round and round, and the painted ponies go up and down. We're captive on the carousel of time. We can't return, we can only look behind from where we came and go round and round and round in the circle again.
After being located on Dega Road for over 30 years, the move to a much larger facility in Maple Glen in 2006 was the beginning of a dream fulfilled. Not just a synagogue, Beth Or has become a Jewish center to a multifaceted community. There is no doubt that Rabbi and Laurie have been the driving force behind building this new community.
We brought in experts from the outside, and we did what was called a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we thought, you know what, the time has come. We can't make it work in this building anymore. And so we began that process of raising the money and deciding to sell the building.
Under the leadership of Rabbi Marx, a variety of successful programs have been instituted for the benefit of the Beth Or community. Perhaps the effort closest to their hearts has been their work to strengthen the connection between Beth Or and Israel by organizing and leading multiple visits for congregants.
Almost every year, we've got something connecting the congregation to Israel. And it's been a very positive thing for the community, because when I look around in the sanctuary on a Friday night and I see who's there, it's those people I've had dinner with, it's those people we're getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning and hiking Masada. You develop relationships with people like that, and they connect with each other, and so they're the regulars who come.
In addition to his efforts within the synagogue, Rabbi Marx has made a similar impact on our neighboring communities. Beth Or is involved with the Interfaith Housing Alliance and Philadelphia Futures, a program that prepares students from low-income families for college. Here is a rabbi who has accomplished so much in 30 years for his congregation, but knows where the credit is truly due. He'll tell you himself, he is nothing without Laurie.
I would be absolutely lost without Laurie Singer Marx in my life. I adore her. I worship her. And I say that not only because she's beautiful, but because she is the sane one. I am the frenetic, neurotic Jew, and she is very reasoned, very smart, and can help me look at situations not always as emotionally as sometimes I do, and help me reason them through. And she's a fabulous sounding board when it either comes to an idea or a sermon or a political problem that I happen to be encountering in the congregation. I would be lost without her.
They are quite simply a blessing to this community. The warmth, vibrancy, and inclusive quality of Beth Or is due greatly to Rabbi and Laurie Marx. There's a saying that every synagogue gets the rabbi it deserves. Well, if that is the case, then Congregation Beth Or must have done something very right to be blessed for 30 years with the very best.